The Miami Heat have a serious problem on their hands, an issue, a just flat out glaring sore thumb of a problem, but it's not a new one. That's the worst part about it. We're going to deep dive into everything that's been going on with the Miami Heat this season, 7 games in, and their biggest problem we thought was rebounding, but it's really a specific quarter. This is ridiculous on what the Miami Heat have been doing. But before we dive into all of it, let's make sure we're subscribing to Heat Digest so we can talk even more about the Miami Heat and what they need to really do to fix what we all have been talking about, their third quarter problems. The Miami Heat right now are the worst team in the association. We talk about third quarter woes. If we look over here at this image, the Miami Heat ranked dead last in third quarter net plus minus. Plus 9.4 in the first, that's good for eighth. Plus 18.5, that's good for third when we talk about the second quarter. And the fourth quarter, another plus 9.4, that's good for eighth. But minus 35.5, that is dead last in the association. And I believe it's easy to say that Coach Spo is just like the rest of us Miami Heat fans. At some point, you have to take a stand in these third quarters. Enough is enough. That is the best way to put it. Enough is enough right now for the Miami Heat. You have to wonder, how is this happening? Why is this happening? But I really want you guys to understand that this is not something that is necessarily new to the Miami Heat. We look here again, the overall minus 52 point differential in the association. That is good for third worst in the association, ahead of only the Trailblazers and the Jazz. Behind the Nets, the Wizards, the Pelicans, the Sixers without Embiid and Paul George for pretty much the entire season, the Hawks, the Pacers. Like, these are not the teams that the Miami Heat should be in conversations with for these type of reasons. These are the teams that the Miami Heat should be flat out better than, no question about it. Have to hunker down in these third quarters. You have to try your best and understand that we are not a good third quarter team, so we have to come out and be as good as we can be. Clean up the mistakes, because the biggest thing is the Miami Heat, just as you're going to see here from Bam Adebayo in his quotes, that's been the deciding factor in a lot of these games. It's the third quarter, honestly. Not first half, fourth, it's the third. We let our foot off the gas, let teams back in to be interesting. It costs us games, and it flat out has cost them the last 2 games now. Talking about the Phoenix Suns last night and the Sacramento Kings, on Monday. The Miami Heat, we look back at the Sacramento Kings situation here. The Heat led by 15 early in the third, 15 points, but were outscored 37-17 in that quarter. And the Miami Heat have been outscored 137-71 in 4 third quarters at home this season. Because again, the Monday game against Sacramento was at home. And how did the Heat lose? At the buzzer on a tip-in by Domantas Sabonis. Now let's look back at last night against the Phoenix Suns. The third quarter, when we look at the actual scoring, then you turn it around, it's the end of the third quarter that really hurt the Miami Heat last night against the Phoenix Suns. You're talking about a quarter where the Heat were up double digits, but the Suns run off a 15-point run to get back into the game, have the momentum now. So yes, you look at the scoring margin, yeah, it was even 29-29, but those last 3 minutes or so, the Phoenix Suns had all the momentum. And what ends up happening? The Phoenix Suns win at the buzzer pretty much, or on the last possession. This time the Miami Heat not able to get up a shot even. You got to go back to the third quarter. The third quarter has been the make or break quarter for the Miami Heat. And again, if you look at the numbers, this is not something that is necessarily new for the Miami Heat. If we look back at the overall history when we talk about third quarters, again, this is right now, this season, on this image right here, the Miami Heat dead last, number 30 in the association with point per third quarter games. 21.8. Again, we're not saying you have to be the Golden State Warriors, who are 33.7, or the Chicago Bulls, who are 33.3. But you can't be below Utah, Philadelphia, Portland, Charlotte. Bro, you cannot be below these teams if you have aspirations of, forget an NBA championship, an Eastern Conference championship. If you have aspirations of getting out of the first round, of getting out of the play-in even, I don't know if a team that's this bad in the third quarter can really get out of the play-in. I really don't believe that. So the Miami Heat have to hunker down and understand that the third quarter has become the make or break moment in games for them. If they do not control their third quarter woes, they will lose games. And I mentioned that this is not a new problem. This ugly monster has reared its head yet again. This is last year's third quarter points per game from down up. So the Indiana Pacers, the Golden State Warriors, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, I believe that is, all 3 of those teams were the best third quarter teams. And rightfully so. I mean, talking about Indiana last year, they had one of the best offenses in NBA history at points throughout the season. Look at the Miami Heat. Only ahead of Charlotte, Portland, and Memphis, who Memphis was jawless. Portland was Damian Lillardless. And Charlotte was a rebuilding team. Like, those are the three teams you're ahead of. And you're behind Cleveland, a good team, bad third quarter. They were still figuring things out. The San Antonio Spurs, who had their first year with Victor Wembanyama, so they weren't really trying to win games. And then Orlando Magic, who were a good young team, but again, they're a young team. They don't have aspirations of winning a championship. They have aspirations of making it to the playoffs. The Miami Heat have aspirations, or should have aspirations, of an NBA championship. But right now, they are not playing like it through four quarters. They are not playing like it through four quarters, and that's what's come down to the next and final point of this video. What is the answer, or what are the answers? And I think you look at Jimmy Butler. You look at Jimmy Butler and what he said in his quotes about the third quarter situations. When we ain't making shots, that's when teams go on runs. We don't get back. We don't defensive rebound. It is a defensive thing, but for us, it's more offense. We want to see the ball go through the basket. Mentally, we need to be stronger and tougher to still get stops, and that's the big problem. Me personally, in my years of being around the sport of basketball and understanding how it works, I'm a believer of two things. The third quarter is the most important quarter for any basketball team, any basketball game in any level of the sport. And defense is something you can control. I live by a saying for defense on that last point, defense travels. What I mean by that is offensively, you could go through a game, a week, a month, a season sometimes really going through a slump. There might be nights where you can't throw a rock into the ocean. It is what it is. But defensively, you cannot let the offense impact you. If you are so good of an offensive team that you don't let the team score a third quarter point at all, and you just muster up 2 points, 1 bucket, 1 layup, 2 free throws, you win the game, you win that quarter, and you continue to mount that up. Now you look at the end of the season, you're one of the best third quarter teams in the association. That's what the Heat have to kind of refocus their mindset on. This has been a defensive team, a defensive franchise, really, their entire history. No one's ever looked at Miami Heat and said, this is a great offensive team. Yes, when you had the Heatos and the Big Three with Bosh and Wade and LeBron, and even before that when you had a young D Wade, like, yes, we were an offensive team that could score, but we were still had the Udonis Haslem of the world, the Alonzo Mournings of the world, even the Tim Hardaways, the Eddie Joneses, the Shaquille O'Neals. Like, we had a team full of dogs, full of defensive-minded people. Right now we have that, but we're not playing like it. Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, even a Tyler Hero and Terry Rozier, yeah, they're not great defenders, but when they want to, they can sit down and guard for a possession, 2 possessions, whatever is needed for the team to win. We have those type of players on the team. They're just not playing like it right now. They need to refocus. No matter how much offensive struggles you're going through, defense is something you can control. And what brings me back to that first point I said, the third quarter is the most important quarter. Why? It's the first 3 minutes of that third quarter out of the halftime break will make or break that game. Because if you're the team that's down, you're going to the halftime, trying to make adjustments, trying to implement those adjustments in the third quarter. If you're the team that's up, you're just trying to continue what's been working. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just lock in, see that light at the end of the tunnel, and go for that death blow. Third quarters are so important in basketball because it shows who's really locked in out of that halftime break. We've seen plenty of times in the NBA's history, a team will have a great first half, the halftime break kind of cools them down, and now they can't find the rhythm, or vice versa. A rough first half, the halftime break kind of lets them refocus on themselves, and now they have a great second half. The Miami Heat need to find the in-between. I'm not saying that we need to become the best third quarter team in NBA history. We can't be the worst. And I feel like we're on pace to be one of the worst ever because of the way things are going right now. And in the end, the Miami Heat have to understand how important the third quarter is. And they do. I know they do. We've seen pictures. We've seen all the quotes. We've seen everything. The franchise understands that this is a problem that they need to address. Aside from the rebounding problems, aside from even the good stuff, like last night, Tyler had a great game, 28 points. Bam did struggle a little bit, but did have a double-double. Aside from all of that, for 12 minutes in the third quarter of play, the Miami Heat need to be better flat out. Go ahead and comment down below, you guys, what you think the answer is to try and figure out the third quarter problems for the Miami Heat. With that being said, let's make sure we're subscribing so we can follow along as the Miami Heat will change and will address this problem before the season's end here on Heat Digest.